What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Sansom Sports Media Podcast. We're your hosts, Hunter and Michael, coming at you about an hour and 50 minutes before the committee does their top 16 reveal. I'm really interested to see what they do today. There's a couple of different areas where I think they have some leeway to do whatever they would like. My biggest thing, I think, 1 seeds and then the last 4 seed. Mike, I don't know any thoughts on any of those areas or anything else you're looking for?
I mean, as far as the top 16, I am interested to see who's going to get the last 3 seed because I think the top up to 11 is fairly not obvious, but not too hard to figure out.
Absolutely.
You can differentiate between the order. That's totally fine. You want to have UConn, Iowa State at the 4th number 1 seed. I get it.
Yeah.
You want to have Kansas on the 2 line instead of Purdue. I get it. But the top 11 feels pretty obvious.
Yeah.
The last 3 seed is not. I see you have Gonzaga there.
So top 11, I think the teams are obvious. There is a little bit of nuance with the order for sure. You could have Purdue, Kansas, Florida even as the last 2 seed a little bit. But I'm really, you mentioned Gonzaga there, as I have them as my last 3. We give a lot of leeway to these teams that maybe have that one really bad, like one-off type of a loss. I'm kind of doing that with Gonzaga here with that Portland loss, and the rest of their resume is pretty clean. That being said,
Michigan State could have very easily lost to Rutgers.
Exactly.
And should have.
They really should have lost to Rutgers. I remember that game. It was not something that they should have won.
And Rutgers is not that much better than who they lose to, Oregon State or whoever it was.
Exactly. I personally think that they'll give it to Gonzaga. They typically treat Gonzaga pretty well, especially with the metric profile they have. So I do think that Gonzaga gets that 3, but also I have no idea when they did this top 16.
Right.
So UConn could be that final 1 seed. Wouldn't be shocked at all. They could have Houston. They could have Iowa State if they want to delineate the head-to-head really well. All 3 of the teams would not surprise me, which is why I'm really curious. I do think you'll see Michigan, Duke, Arizona. I'd be surprised if it's not Michigan, Duke, Arizona, but you could maybe flip Duke and Arizona if you wanted to. Wouldn't have any real qualms with that. That being said, for those of you who don't know this, the number 1 overall seed will get to pick their region. So they get to pick what location they go to. So the first round site, Michigan is picking Philadelphia over Buffalo if they're the number 1 overall. So they will not go to their closest site. They're going to go to their preferred site. And then they're picking Chicago for their Elite 8 Sweet 16 area.
Do we know if Duke's been asked about it?
Duke has been asked, but as of right now, it hasn't broken. Everybody is expecting Michigan to be.
Yeah.
So they haven't even gone to that point yet where I've seen it break. But I do know Michigan's came out the other day.
I still think when it's all said and done, not right now. I still think Arizona has a pretty good shot at the number 1 overall seed, especially if they win today.
Yeah. I think all 3 of Michigan, Duke, Arizona, if they would. Whoever goes undefeated the rest of the regular season, which I know isn't easy, and I'm making it sound simple, is probably your number 1 overall seed. That being said, Michigan's definitely got the leg up to do that right now. I think they're the better. They're playing. I know we talked about them peaking early, but I feel like they're peaking again.
I was actually surprised when looking at the resumes of Arizona and UConn. I was expecting a wider gap.
Same.
And it wasn't as wide as I thought it was, to the point where the big differentiate, if Arizona were to lose today, would be the Arizona head-to-head win over UConn.
Yep. And you could say the same thing this time last week or 2 weeks ago about Illinois and UConn when we were talking about them.
Yep.
The differentiator is that November matchup head-to-head. And, now it's a little different, but, it is very tight along those top seed lines.
Who knew those games in November and December would come in so handy now?
You never would have thought of it.
No, I didn't think Illinois would be up as a 2 seed. I thought, good team, decent team, 4 or 5 maybe, and then they started, rattling off wins, took a couple losses, and just beat the crap out of USC and Indiana the last 2 games.
Absolutely.
One team I
Looking,
want to bring up that I think could get that final number 3 seed is Alabama. There's a lot of kind of warts in the resumes of Michigan State when it comes to like winning on the road. Virginia has the 4 Q1A wins, but they're kind of lesser of them. Like when I say lesser, I mean toward the bottom of the Q1A. Vanderbilt, I just don't know.
Vandy is 1-3 in Quadrant 1A, and as you just mentioned, it's tough to differentiate right there. So that's why they're my 16 overall.
Alabama has the wins over Illinois, St. John's. They just beat Arkansas. Now, how much that win is going to boost them, I don't know because of when it happened. Also, it was a double overtime game, so I don't know how much that adds, but it is a win adding to the resume. They've beaten Kentucky, some other pretty good teams. Now they do have 7 or 8 losses, but they played the nation's first or second ranked strength of schedule. Now, the issue they have is the one really good win that Gonzaga has that has kind of aged well is their win over Alabama.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if it gets to a Gonzaga-Alabama debate, that's an issue for them. But I don't know that the final 3 seed and the top 4 seed is going to make a whole lot of difference when it comes coming down to this end of the season. But it might. I don't know.
I mean, personally, I would rather be at the top of one of these seed lines than the bottom of one of these seed lines, especially if you're an East Coast team, which all of those 4 seeds are. You don't want to get shipped way out west to play with Gonzaga in their region or with Arizona out there.
I will say, and we'll get to this later on maybe, but there's a gap between the 12 and the 13 seed, and there's another gap between the 13 and the 14.
Yeah. That would be the only
sometimes there are years where like the 13 and the 14s are fairly comparable. I don't see that this year.
Agreed.
Especially if Utah Valley is not able to participate in the WAC tournament because I think they're the best team in that league.
I would agree. I think right now you've got a bunch of 15 seeds sitting on the 14 line. Personally, I had a hard time with Portland State, North Carolina, and CBU all being 14s, but they're better than the 15s that I have right now. So it's just kind of take your pick situation.
This is where the Vermonts and the Colgates having down years is kind of weighing those leagues down to where they are.
And I mean, that's kind of an era, a byproduct of the portal in the era that we're in right now, but also like those leagues are having more parity than I've seen in years. I mean, Green Bay's second in the Horizon League right now.
Isn't that crazy? Doug Gottlieb.
Yeah. And they did it without Gottlieb last night. So it's proving that he's built a good team. And it's not just him out coaching everybody or something like that. Like it's really impressive what some of these mid-major leagues are doing. And I mean, I'm obviously a little biased to the Horizon League, but seeing Navy or Austin Peay be able to step up and be in the lead of their leagues. I mean,
Queens is having a pretty nice year as they're eligible now to participate in the tournament should they get there. And I mean, we're saying Vermont's having a down year. They could still win the league.
Yeah, I mean, they're second in the league right now.
Yeah.
Like I wrote about them this morning. There's a very solid chance that if they win today, they're winning tiebreakers in the league.
Right.
So it's not like they're down. They're just not running through the league, which I think is a byproduct, again, of some of these better recruits going down to some of the mid-majors and it trickling all the way down. And some of these portal additions being able to move around a lot more. And it's a good thing for the league. We just need the eligibility cases on the top end to stop. I'm looking at you.
Maybe the Big East has a chance. Yuck, 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 yuck.
Big East, 3 bids. That is all we're going to talk about with the Big East today. I don't want to start my day off that poorly. So that being said, running back up to the one lines here, Michigan, Duke, Arizona. Michigan, a resume average of 1 even. They lead all 3 categories as a 1. For predictives, they are second in BPI, but 1 in KPI or KenPom and Torvik.
There's nowhere to put them other than 1.
Yes. 5-0 in Quadrant 1A, 10-0 in Q1. Yeah, they do have the Q2 loss, but they've also played 10 Q2 games to Duke's 6 to Arizona's 5. If you play more games, there's a higher chance you'll lose games. That's what happened. They lost to Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a good team. They're a 7 seed. It's not like they lost to Rutgers or somebody like that on the road. So I'm willing to give them a pass on the Q2 game, especially with it being their only loss. Duke, second overall resume metrics, 2.7 predictive average. Again, both resumes are better, or both metrics are better They have 6 quadrant 1A wins to Arizona's 4, and then 10-2. They're both 10-2 overall in Q1. It's a very tight margin, but right now I think it's pretty clear that Duke should be that second team if they've considered the entire week of games, and depending on when they did it. And then Arizona 3 and 3.3 for metrics, 4-1 in Q1A, 10-2 overall in Q1, 15-2 in quadrants 1 and 2. A pretty clear 3 in my opinion, but they could easily, if they lose another 2 or 3 games, like you said, Mike, fall back a little bit.
I thought that was an important kind of win over BYU to kind of stop their little 2-game slump, skid, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, and that was another good win that they added to their long collection of good wins.
Yes. And the top end of the bracket is very heavy. Like we talked about the bottom end kind of having a bunch of 14s and 15s. The top 20, 25 teams here are very, very good. You could start talking about BYU, Utah State maybe not being as good with the 6 line. But until you get to there, I mean, it is a very strong top end of the field, which is why when I'm doing projections and saying, hey, I think my Final Four is going to see X, Y, and Z, I'm not picking all the 1 seeds because they're good, but there's also a lot of really good teams throughout the bracket right now.
I'm interested to see what they're going to do with Texas Tech with the injury to Toppin. I also think Arkansas has a chance to end up in the top 16.
I would agree. I haven't seen a ton of people do it yet, but that would be we're going to surprise you and throw them in over Vanderbilt or something.
I mean, they also beat Vanderbilt too, by a lot.
Absolutely.
So, and I looked at Arkansas's resume. It's not bad at all. It's pretty good, actually.
Absolutely.
They were actually, I think, the second SEC team that I locked after Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
And remember, Vanderbilt had a pretty big head start at 16-0. You know.
Exactly. Yeah, they sputtered a little bit in SEC play, but have gotten it righted pretty quickly and are doing great. To kind of
don't know what we're going to see with St. John's. You know, not a lot of opportunities to pick up good wins. They haven't really picked up many. The UConn win obviously was massive for them. And this is where the Big East just isn't doing St. John's and UConn much favors. I mean, I feel like UConn's had 5 or 6 Q1 wins for like a year.
Months. Yeah. They sit at 7-2 in Q1 right now. They are going to have a Q1 game today with they're at Villanova, but that's not going to be an easy game to just walk into, especially the way it's played.
That's the kind of win where Nova's looking to secure a bid.
Yep. Yeah, I have already locked Villanova. They're at 20 wins. They're not but I know. Iowa State, Houston, Connecticut for that final 1 seed. You've got Iowa State with resume metric and predictive metrics of 7, but they have 4-1 in Q1, 3 losses all in Q1. Houston, which is my pick for that final 1 seed, 6 resume metric average, but then 3.3 predictive metric average, 2-3 in quadrant 1, 7-3 overall in Q1, and 15-3 total in 1 and 2. For UConn, 4.7 resume average, predictive of 11, which is why I have them so low. And then 4-2 in quadrant 1, 7-2 in 4-2 in 1A, 7-2 in quadrant 1, and 13-3 overall in Q1 and 2. I think I struggle with any of these 3 teams being on the 1 line. They all have a case for it. I went with predictives just a little bit to help see them. Warlock, when they were doing the mock committee this week, did say that they do lean typically on predictives and kind of reinforce that.
So, my opinion, I think UConn has the better resume of the 3, and I think is most deserving of the 4th number 1 seed. However, I think Houston of those 3 is the best team. So, like, if you gave me a region of Houston, UConn, I don't know, anyone other than maybe Florida right now as the 3 seed, and I'd be picking Houston to get to the Final Four.
Agreed.
So.
Yeah, the thing that I had with UConn is they have that Q2 loss. So that bumps them down a little bit.
And not a good one either.
Exactly. It's just splitting hairs at this point. And thankfully, it's all going to work itself out. Houston, Iowa State being in the Big 12, they're going to get a bunch of big games and have every opportunity to pass UConn, clearly. But UConn has a chance to just have a gaudy record and just make it really impressive. Moving ahead to the Illinois, Purdue, Kansas, Florida type of battle. I don't think Florida has a 2 seed resume at this point. But looking at Illinois and Purdue, Illinois resume of 8.3, predictive of 4.3. Again, really impressive predictive metrics, keeping them up there. Purdue 5.3 and then 8 respectively. They are 5-4 in quadrant 1A, and then 8-5 overall in quadrant 1, which is a really good record, but starting to amount a little bit more losses than some of these other teams have. What are your thoughts?
Purdue definitely has added more losses lately, but they found time to add some good wins in there too.
Yeah.
And you can't forget some of the wins that they got in November and December. I mean, they beat a healthy Texas Tech team. They beat Alabama. So, and you can't, discount what is it, like a top 10 strength of schedule too.
Yeah.
These things matter.
Yep.
And that's the kind of thing that unfortunately is probably going to bump Nebraska down to that 11th spot there.
Yeah.
Nebraska has some good wins. They've struggled a bit lately, and they did not play the strength of schedule that Florida, Kansas, and Purdue did. Okay. And that's where I think that's going to lead them actually a pretty clear 11.
Yeah. And they're relatively volatile as they continue down the rest of the season. It is very possible they end up as like a 5 seed or a 6 seed if they don't continue to win, because their metrics are not elite, and there's a chance. I mean, they're just 4-4 in quadrant 1A. I say just, but anytime that you've got 8 games and you're 4-4, it's a problem, especially when you're just 5-4 in quadrant 1. So again, you can see that strength of schedule start to rear its head a little bit. They've only played 9 Q1 games as opposed to Florida, who's 8-5, Purdue 8-5, Illinois 7-4, Kansas 6-6. All of those guys have played 12, 13, 11, 12, 13 games, and then you're sitting down there having just played 9. It does put you at a disadvantage.
The one thing that makes me a little bit nervous when it comes to, like, say, Nebraska and Vanderbilt in the tournament is these are two teams that are not used to being not only there, but this high, right? Yeah. And if they wind up in a game with Cal Baptist or Hawaii or Stephen F. Austin, and it's a 2-point game with 5 minutes left, they are not used to that kind of, single elimination pressure like that. And that's the kind of ones that make me nervous about in a first round potential upset.
Yep.
Now, if they get out to an early lead and they get to run away, fine. But if the game stays close, they are two teams that I really worry about.
Agreed.
I'm sure it'll probably happen, but I would be very surprised if any of the top 10 before Nebraska get knocked out in the first round.
I would agree with that. I mean, I don't even know that I'm sure it'll happen, to be fully honest with you. This is the year where I'm probably going to go very chalky in those first couple of rounds, especially the 1, 2, 3, 4 seeds, which I normally do pick a 3 seed to get upset or a 4 seed to get upset, but I don't know. I mean, unless Vanderbilt or Nebraska just really fall off, I don't know that I'm picking any of those teams to lose to any of these 13, 14, 15, 16.
Right.
Seeds. I'm definitely not picking any of the 1 seeds, probably not any of the 2 seeds to lose.
No.
You could convince me of a Nebraska or a Gonzaga, maybe, and also maybe a Michigan State or Vanderbilt. But other than that, I don't know that I'm seeing any real losses. I think Alabama and Virginia are very good, going to be a little underseeded in my opinion, just because of the different nuances and how the schedule broke. But I think both of those are fine. Yep. Gonzaga, if they're healthy, I think they'll be fine. They'll get a game out west and be in a good spot. Nebraska, I think Hoiberg can coach and get them through a game. Now, that being said, when they get to that next round where they're going to play a better team, it might get a little bit more hairy.
I actually think they might relax a little bit once they get past the first game, and it may kind of settle them down. But it's
Nebraska's
the first
never won a
game.
tournament game.
I know.
That out there. That's fair.
It's the first kind of getting the monkey off your back, and once you kind of get it, I mean, I'm sorry, but North Carolina, Louisville scares me somewhat, especially if they're healthy. But Utah State, BYU, I mean, Utah State's tough. It is the Mountain West, though, in the tournament.
Yeah, exactly.
And, it's not like BYU wins quad 1 games very often, at least not against better teams.
Yeah. And, I mean, BYU is a really interesting paradox. I could see them honestly moving down to an 8-9 type of thing. I don't think the committee's going to leave them out, especially with AJ DeBansa. That's too many eyes. And I'm sorry, but believe it or not, the committee's going to want to make sure they get viewership. So I think BYU will be there, but I do think they'll drop a little bit. That being said, let's move back up towards our 3-4 seeds here. We talked about Nebraska and Gonzaga a bit, so we'll move to Michigan State. Michigan State, Virginia, Alabama, Vanderbilt. Who do you like out of that 4 the best?
Out of those 4, I like Alabama the best.
Okay.
But I've also seen them kind of play down to some of their lesser SEC competition too. So that's what makes me nervous too. Izzo and March is hard to bet against too.
Exactly. The more I look at Virginia's resume, the more that I think, and I won't say that they're going to do it, they're going to make it to the 3 line. Do not get me wrong. But it's a clean resume. They do have a Q2 loss, but a lot of teams, Gonzaga has a Q3-4 loss at this point. It's possible that you see Virginia in that 4-0 Quadrant 1A record with pretty clean resume metrics. They do have a predictive average of 20, though, that I think will hurt them. But there's a conversation for them to be a 3 seed. I do think they'll end up on the 4 line, though.
Okay.
You could also see them fall out, if you want my full honest opinion. If they wanted to put Texas Tech or Arkansas or somebody up there, I can definitely see the logic for that. Virginia is one of those teams that I'm very intrigued to see what they do with, especially with how they're going to respect the ACC kind of going out throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan State, 14.3 resume average, 13.3 predictive average, 1-4 in Q1A, which does give me some pause. 6-4 in Q1, 5-1 in Q2 for an 11-5 overall in those quad records. I think Michigan State should probably be a little bit lower than what I have them right now, the more I look at it.
And
I have them
no real wins of significance on the road.
Yeah.
I do think they picked up a couple of decent neutral court wins in non-conference, but nothing on the road, especially in league play.
Yep.
I think their best road win in the league play is like Washington or something.
Yeah, I think that's right. Moving ahead to Virginia, like we talked about, 4-0, 5-2 in Quadrant 1, 7-1 in Quadrant 2 for a 12-3 record, so better than Michigan State in Q1 and 2. Better metrics on the resume side, and then lackluster predicted metrics at this time. Alabama, 11.7 on the resume, 18.7 predictives, 3-5 in Q1A, 6-6 in Q1, 7-1 in Q2 for a 13-7 record. I have them down a little bit just because that record there's a lot of losses. It's the same treatment and we're going to get to this in a minute, but Auburn is down there on the 11 line with some damn good wins because they have a ton of losses. So I think Bama is on the 4 line. You could even tell me they're going to be on the 5, and I wouldn't question it too much.
Yeah.
Texas Tech. What do you think they're going to do with the Red Raiders with JT Toppin's injury news? He is out for the year. They just lost to Arizona State. Did the committee even look at that when they did this? Had they already done the bracket? I don't know. So again,
and I think he went down late in that game, right? Either
late in the first half or early in the second half, but late enough to where I was in bed. So the committee was probably.
I thought it was fairly late in the game, with under 5 minutes left.
Honestly, it may have been. I thought I heard somebody say early in the second half, but again, you're after midnight Eastern at that point. A lot of the committee members were probably already asleep.
I mean, they were struggling with him in that game.
Yes.
But they also were coming off of some pretty high energy kind of games too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we're talking objectively from a basketball stance, I would give them, I guess, a little bit of a break for it.
Yep.
Because they absolutely have the resume to be on the 4 line. You could even convince me they should be on the last 3 line. I mean, they have some really good wins.
Yeah.
Duke, Arizona. Didn't they also beat Houston too? No, they didn't beat Houston, but they beat somebody else that was pretty good too.
I'm going to pull it real quick. It's loading. What gives me pause is they have a losing Quadrant 1A and Quadrant 1 record. So they're getting to these games where they're losing a lot of games. They did beat Houston.
They did. So Houston, Duke, and Arizona. That's
3-1 seeds right now.
Yeah.
That means they're 3-5 in Q1A, so they got 5 losses there. They're 6-7 in Q1 overall, and then 3-0 in Q2. The record, while they did play a decent non-conference schedule, it does kind of the back end of the non-conference schedule is weak. 7-0 in Quadrant 3. We're starting to talk a lot more about that back end of the resume, and a lot of these teams have more than 16 Q1 and 2 games at this point. So 14-17 for resume and predictives. If you wanted to convince me they're on the 4 line, sure. I don't know that I'm ready to put them over a Gonzaga or somebody with better predictive metrics and a winning record in Q1 and 2, despite Tech having probably the collection of 3 best wins in the country.
I also don't think it's unfair, even without seeing Texas Tech play without JT Toppin, to say they're not as good without a top 3 player in college basketball.
100%. I understand why they would ding them a little bit. It's I hate to say it, but it's the Jordan Travis treatment of Florida State a couple of years ago.
Right.
That being said, they get the benefit of showing that they can still play without him in the game. So they've got every opportunity. They just have to go out and prove it. Arkansas.
But the question is, can they beat the likes of? Would they be able to beat the likes of Arizona, Houston, Duke without Toppin? That's the question I have. Yeah,
I would completely say no, and it's not like they blew these teams out where Toppin didn't have to play.
They were like one possession games.
Exactly. So no, I do not think that they would beat any of those teams without JT Toppin, who's arguably one of the best player in the country, if you want my honest opinion.
I mean, you give it a single game, sure, anything can happen. But over the long haul, I just don't see how they would get through those teams without him.
Completely agree. Looking at the 5 line here, you got Texas Tech, like we talked about. Arkansas, which I know we've already mentioned, their resume metrics of 19. They're 19.3 in predictives, 3-6 in Quadrant 1. Again, 6-7 in Quadrant 2, 4-0 in Quadrant 2, 6-7 in Quadrant 1. Sorry, and then 10-7 overall in those top quadrants. What are your thoughts on the Razorbacks?
Pretty good team. A team that I could see up on the 4 line. I have no idea though what we're going to get from them in the tournament.
Game to game, yeah.
I could see them being upset in the first round. I could see them winning the first 2 games and giving one of the 1 seeds a tough game. Yeah. If not winning, I don't know.
It's the quintessential like Cal type of team that does either boom or bust type of situation. Yep. But the freshman guard that can go out and put up 45 points a night like Acuff did this week, or I mean, you've got the bigs down low that are experienced and kind of help like steady the team a little bit. I really like this team, and I've said it before that I think this is like the Cal teams at Kentucky that won big, but this is a different climate, and I don't know that they've got enough to beat up a Michigan, Duke, Arizona, Houston type of situation. Tennessee, I think, is the only team that I'm like very clearly you're a 5 or a 6, not a 4 or a 5.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of leave them out. 20.7 resume average, 14.7 predictive, 4-7 in Quadrant 1. So we'll leave them there. St. John's, 19.3 resume, 19.3 predictives. Almost exactly on that 19th spot. Which will put them exactly where I have them. That being said, 2-1 in Quadrant 1A with the win over UConn being the highlight. 4-4 in Quadrant 1 overall. And 7-0 in Quadrant 2 for an 11-4 record, which is better than Arkansas or Tennessee in Quadrant 1. But they have a 7-1 record in Q3 with the loss to Providence at home. What are your thoughts on the Fighting Rick Pitino's?
I would actually probably flip-flop Tennessee and St. John's. Not a big difference, but I like Tennessee's collection of good wins better than St. John's. They kind of both have kind of a comparable loss. St. John's lost to Providence, Tennessee lost to Syracuse, although the Tennessee loss was on the road. On the road,
and that's Q1 as opposed to Q3. Big difference, even though they're the same quality, and I get what you're saying. It's a big difference when it comes to a resume. And I'm
like Tennessee, I wouldn't consider them from the 4 line quite, but I would think about them more than I would St. John's. Like I wouldn't even consider St. John's as a 4 seed right now.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, just the 2 Quadrant 1A wins, and it's not like we're talking about a Gonzaga team that's 6-1 in Quadrant 1 overall and crazy predictives. But I mean, they feel pretty safely 19. If you want to put them at 20, I'm fine with that. I punished Tennessee a little bit for a 4-5 quadrant 1A record, and then the 4-7 overall in quadrant 1. If you're going to get these opportunities and you're not going to win them, at least at a 500 clip, I really don't like that we're keeping these teams up. So being 3 games under 500 was hard for me.
I can actually see Wisconsin as a 6 right now and Louisville as a 7.
Yeah, I think when you get to that 6 line, things get really muddy really quickly. There is a clear top 20, 21 teams, maybe, if you want to include North Carolina there. And then things just get chaotic very quickly. You could see a Utah State team lose to Nevada and drop from a 6 to an 8 today with the results around them.
Oh,
Or
yeah,
Utah
at least.
State becomes Louisville. Louisville could lose to Georgia Tech today and drop way down. Like, there is a ton of movement possible. And that 6 to 8 line, maybe from Louisville down to Iowa there, I think is one tier of teams that all kind of fit together. And then I think UCF down to Texas is kind of in another grouping above the bubble right now in pretty decent shape. Not necessarily a near lock, but in a good spot, but still pretty volatile. And then once you get to St. Mary's, you've got St. Mary's and all of these teams that I really struggle with. And I see now that I've got New Mexico on the 9 line, they should be the last team in the field down there.
Yeah, how did that?
I have no idea what happened to the graphic this morning. I'll have to fire the intern. But
I didn't even notice that until now. Like, oh yeah, you have 5 9 seeds.
And the intern is myself doing this at 3 a.m. after I got home from Miami of Ohio last night. So I apologize. I will be better. It's a drag and drop situation where New Mexico pulled up to the 9 line instead of the 11. So apologies on that. I'll get the graphic fixed shortly.
Were they like one of the last 4 in?
Yeah,
that makes sense because
both right in behind Ohio State there.
Yeah,
I wanted to talk a little bit about St. Mary's and Ohio State, and I'm comparing the two specifically. Yesterday I had Ohio State out. I had St. Mary's a little bit higher on the 9 line. I flipped around a little bit today without either team playing. And I did so just actually Carrie Miller, one of the bracketologists on Twitter, had brought it up to me yesterday. Like, you got a 20 spot difference, but like neither of them have Q1A wins, and there's some trouble there. And I dug in a little bit further to look at them. And this is where strength of schedule and scheduling decent in the non-conference helps. And it's not necessarily scheduling decent as in scheduling a bunch of Q4 games, but they're on the top end of Q4. It's scheduling some good Q3s instead of Q4s, and the nuances that you can't necessarily control when you're doing a schedule. St. Mary's 0-3 in quadrant 1. Ohio State's 0-8. St. Mary's is Q2 6-1, as is Ohio State at 6-1 as well. St. Mary's has a lot more in the quadrant 3 category than Ohio State does. St. Mary's is 17-0 to Ohio State's 11-0 in quadrants 3 and 4. That being said, those 8 losses that Ohio State have in Q1 compared to just 3 for St. Mary's really pull down their predictive metric average and their resume metric average. Resume is 32.7 for St. Mary's compared to 47.3 for Ohio State. Predictives 32.3 for St. Mary's, 36.7 for Ohio State. So as you can see, some of the close losses have kept Ohio State's predictives up. Some of the blowouts have helped St. Mary's stay up. But that resume is just lacking. A 47-3 right now without a Q1 win, I can't have you. Like, it's hard to get you above Dayton.
The thing with comparing Ohio State and St. Mary's is for all the opportunities that Ohio State has had compared to St. Mary's, the best that they've been able to do with it is home wins over Wisconsin, UCLA, and USC.
Yep.
Wisconsin is a 7 seed, maybe a 6 seed at best, right? And then it's hard to argue for UCLA and USC being tournament teams right now, let alone being like, ooh, that's so. I mean, how much better of it would have than what St. Mary's had with their wins over they beat Virginia Tech. They got a couple other decent wins too. I mean, they're not maybe quite as good as UCLA and USC, but they're not that much different.
Absolutely.
So, I don't have a problem with St. Mary's being above Ohio State. I think we keep coming back to that finale between Ohio State and Indiana. I'm not even sure, Indiana may have to win some other games beyond that right now because, Indiana.
Yes.
Indiana is now 4-10 in Q1, Q2 games.
Yep.
That is not. We're not talking 4-10 in Q1. We're talking 4-10 in Q1 and Q2 total combined.
Yep.
I know they're undefeated outside of that. I get that, but an Indiana team that was undefeated in Q3 and Q4 got left out last year.
And what's to say? I mean, there's not that much of a difference this year, to be fully honest with you. The bubble is weaker, so that is going to be a benefit to Indiana. I thought last year we were leaving a team out that's deserving. Right now, we're putting teams in that are not deserving. I do not think Santa Clara or Ohio State are deserving at this point.
And they were not close to beating Illinois and Purdue. I mean, they got curb stomped.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, the remaining games are Northwestern, Michigan State, Minnesota at home, Ohio State on the road. The Minnesota and Northwestern game are only going to hurt them. They will only become Q2 if they lose them. That is not how you want to become a Q2, and it'll just be another loss to a Q1, Q2 game.
Exactly.
Now, a Michigan State win would be nice, but you follow it up with a loss to Ohio State, and we're back at 5-11 in the first two quadrants.
Yeah. I think if they can get a Q1, like a big win like that for Michigan State or something, they're going to be in a much better spot.
Yes. Maybe they can stomach, 5-11. They're definitely not getting in if they lose to both Michigan State and Ohio State. And I'm not going through the whole if they make a run in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah,
I'm not going through that.
I am going to get sucked into it eventually, but not yet. I am going to hold out as long as I can. We're going to stay strong. I do want to add, just for some of these quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 games, they can flip flop. So especially for St. Mary's, Virginia Tech is right there on the edge. For Ohio State, you've got Northwestern, West Virginia, and Wisconsin all with a relatively decent shot to flip. So I'm not saying they all three will. I'm not saying any of them will. But that could drastically change a resume. If Ohio State goes from 0 Q1 wins to 2 overnight, even without playing, they're probably moving up 3 or 4 spots just for that. So in a good spot, but they're going to need a little bit of help, and they do definitely need to win. Indiana and Auburn, I'm going to lump them together. I know we just talked about Indiana, but they are very similar resumes. I have them both on the 11 line. Right now I have Auburn playing in Dayton and Indiana not playing in Dayton. That being said, the more that I look at it, I think I would flip them.
Yep.
Auburn is 2-8 in quadrant 1A, 4-10 in quadrant 1, 2-2 in quadrant 2 to get you to 6-12. It's a awful record in quadrant 1 and 2, and they're just 2-0 in quadrant 3, so that gets you to 8-12. 4 games under 500 and 1 through 3 is a tough pill to swallow. Indiana is, like you said, 1-7 in 1A, 2-9 in Q1, 2-1 in Q2, 4-10 overall, but they're 10-10 in quadrants 1 through 3, which is much better. I think that Auburn is probably in a worse spot as of this morning. However, their schedule is just so much better.
And their upcoming schedule gives them a decent chance to get some momentum back. Now, the tough thing is that last game of the season against Alabama is going to be tough.
But let's just pretend that they beat Kentucky, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and LSU and go into that. They're in.
They're in right there. They're in right there at that point.
If they get 3 of those, and let's say they lose to Kentucky but then beat Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and LSU, this is probably a tournament team.
And especially if they go to Alabama and win.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, if they would beat just 2 of these teams, but one of those is Alabama on the road, they're in the tournament.
If they get to 18 wins before the end of the regular season, they're not going to just be in. They're probably going to be in the 8, 9, maybe the last 10 seed or the first 10 seed.
Correct.
At the lowest, if they go out early in the SEC tournament.
Yep. But that includes.
You don't have to like it. You don't have to like the record. But when you play who they played and you get some decent wins in there, it's hard to argue with it.
Yeah.
Do I want to see Miami, Ohio over at Auburn? Yes. But the rest of those teams?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Auburn played Houston, Michigan, St. John's, NC State, Arizona, Purdue, all in the non-conference schedule. Yeah, they went 2-4 in those games, but they played all of those teams. You are going to get a break for playing those teams. It's the same issue. Miami of Ohio is a great example. They are getting heavily punished for being 27-0, but not having played a Q1 game at this time. And it's the complete opposite, but it's the same concept. Play hard teams, get a little bit more leeway. Play weak teams, get no leeway. Done.
Yeah.
With Auburn, they are currently on a 5-game losing streak, though. Tonight's game against Kentucky could not be bigger for them.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts, questions, comments on anything that we haven't touched about yet?
I think Missouri is a little safer than, say, the Auburns, the Indianas, the Georgias, the USC, maybe even the A&M. I don't love their predictives, but I do love their wins that they have. And I think I wrote about it, last night / this morning. I feel pretty good about them as long as they go to at least 2-3 or 3-2 the rest of the way.
Yep.
Because they're going to pick up at least another win or two that's decent if they do that.
Absolutely.
And I mean, they have 2 games at home, 3 on the road, and I feel like they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
I think Texas is in pretty good shape.
Agreed.
Georgia, that was a really big win they had over Kentucky. I don't think they were going to get in without that. They still have some work to do, though, because
they are definitely not in, but they are in a much better spot. Go ahead.
That 301 non-conference strength of schedule, I think I wrote about this too, is that it cannot be close for them.
Yep.
If it's close, there's a good chance they get left out.
Yep.
So they need to win their home games and pick up a road win, I think, to feel secure.
I think we'll get a lot of clarity along the bubble today. There are some pretty big matchups, especially I think TCU and West Virginia are playing today. Loser is really going to have a hard time.
I don't see it. I mean, especially if it's West Virginia. TCU, as bad of losses as they have, those wins that they have over Florida and what was it? Did they beat Kansas too?
Yep.
Or was it some? Yeah, those wins over Florida, Kansas, Wisconsin.
Yep.
That's a pretty good trio of wins to have when you look at the rest of that bubble.
Absolutely.
I mean, Miami is a 9 seed, and they have 2 good wins.
Yes.
SMU has North Carolina at home. Yeah, A&M has 3 nice road wins over bubble teams. That's it. USC has what? A win over Wisconsin?
Yeah. Nothing.
So I think TCU actually has a decent chance.
They would not afford any more bad losses.
Right. So that's my TCU thoughts.
I like it.
We'll see about Cal. They have a pretty doable closing stretch. No help in there really, but they need to win the games that are there.
It's almost like they're just going to inflate their record here at the end to maybe help them out a little bit.
VCU, if they win their last 3 games, I think the best they can get up to as far as the wins above bubble is like a half a win above, I think it was.
I think
you're really, at that point, you're hoping for like no bid Steelers.
Correct. And I think VCU just really hurt themselves last night. Obviously, you're leading at halftime and you get just absolutely beat down in the second half. And then it's a really bad look when you're playing your biggest game of the year and you start a fight. And I know, and I know that like this is subjective and probably shouldn't matter. But if you're going to start a fight and be like that when you're losing, I mean that matters to the committee. I'm sorry, but they're going to see that and they're going to be like, "What are we doing here? Why?"
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's right, but that definitely does cross the mind to some people at least.
Oklahoma State, don't see it right now. That win over BYU was nice, but that's all they have.
And that win certainly doesn't look great because BYU.
No, right. Yeah. And then beyond that next 4 out, it is hard to make a case for anyone.
It's hard to make a case for Oklahoma State or Virginia to be on. Even VCU, you could say. I mean, it is. I'm praying for bid Steelers. I want Miami to win out, and then I want Akron to take that 8 MAC championship. Give me two bid there. I would love to see a A10 team not named VCU at this point beat St. Louis in the championship and us get 2 bids in the A10. You could say,
and maybe San Diego State upsets Utah State in the Mountain West title game, and they get in too. I mean, they could still get in as an at large, but it'd be nice to not have to wonder about that.
Agreed. I'd love to see Santa Clara win the championship of the WCC, so we don't have to question them.
It's
But
funny that, I think Seton Hall won their last game in kind of somewhat thrilling fashion, and yet we don't even see them anymore.
yeah, beating Butler is not going to jump you back up into there.
No.
If you wanted to put them over Oklahoma State or West Virginia, sure, there's an argument.
Yeah.
The issue is I don't think Seton Hall has enough good wins left on the schedule to jump up. Like, part of this is I'm projecting out. Oklahoma State and West Virginia still have great opportunities. Seton Hall doesn't necessarily have that.
And, I'm sorry, but we talked about this in December. I just didn't see it for them.
Yeah.
Holloway's a great coach, and that helps along the way.
Exactly.
But for anyone that's ever seen the movie Angels in the Outfield, there's a line during it where George Knox is talking about his team, and the general manager is basically saying, "You got 25 players. We can't trade all of them." And Knox goes, "There's a thing called talent. They don't have it."
I struggle with Seton Hall. Shaheen has gotten every ounce of talent
Yes.
he has out of them, and that is a testament to just how good of a coach he is. And I hope that if he's not going to go to a bigger program, I hope that they give him an NIL budget.
Oh, they have to.
Because he would be a perennial contender if he had the money to do it.
Yeah.
But
they used to contend pretty well. I mean, PJ Carlissimo coached there for a while.
Pre-NIL, though.
Yes.
From everything I've heard, the alumni, the base just isn't going to buy in financially. So I don't know if that's going to change, but at least for now, I've heard that they are not going to have it. So we'll have to see what happens there.
Which is unfortunate.
Agreed. Any other kind of closing thoughts? We're at 45 minutes. I appreciate everybody who's listened to us today. I have fixed the graphic and it's fixed on the website and everything. So apologies for the 5-9 seeds.
So I love talking about mid-majors, and, I want to take the time to go through like the mid-major, portion of my sheet and go through them, but it's hard because the teams on the 12 line that you often think of like, hey, maybe they have a chance. Liberty has pretty decent resume metrics, but not much to show for it. And lately they've kind of been just getting by some of their lesser Conference USA teams.
Yep.
Belmont, kind of up and down lately, right?
Yep.
South Florida actually looks like a pretty dangerous team. They just have a couple of too many not great losses.
Yeah.
And Yale, I really don't consider them much as a at-large candidate much anymore. They're on my page, but I don't see it. Stephen F. Austin, McNeese, good teams, don't see it. I'd love to have more drama. I mean, the Mountain West has potential for multiple bids. The A10 we've talked about. The American, I think it's just going to be one bid.
I agree.
And then, Miami, if they don't win the MAC tournament, as long as but they need to win the next 3 or 4 games first. They have a potential to be at large. And then obviously Gonzaga would be, and then you've got the whole thing with St. Mary's and Santa Clara. That's really it.
Agreed.
So I don't like giving false hope when I don't need to.
Yeah, there's not much hope left. I'm going to be fully honest with you. It's pretty cooked at this point.
Yeah.
We're just kind of here.
Yeah.
That being said, there's going to be a ton of huge movements throughout things here in the next little bit. And I would expect to see a bunch of teams kind of shuffling around the bracket. Last time I looked, we were down to like 14 spots, and there were like 22 or 23 teams left that I was really considering. It's very tight at this point, and things are going to move pretty quickly here as we close out the year.
Yeah, I have 21 locks, and this week actually was pretty slow as far as adding more because most of them happened last weekend.
Yeah, we're going to see locks because a lot of the teams, we're getting down to where your 7, 8, 9 seeds are the ones we're locking, and that's tougher to do. Wisconsin,
Kentucky, I think Louisville, just have to win, just have to not lose the rest of their games and they're going to make it.
Absolutely. Same with Villanova. I think if they would beat UConn today.
They're in then for sure. If they don't beat UConn or St. John's, then I worry a little bit if they were to take a loss they shouldn't. But as long as they don't take 2 losses, they shouldn't. They're fine.
Yeah. I think they're even if they would lose, let's say to Xavier at home on senior night or whatever. I think they're fine.
I don't even know if they fall below where SMU is.
I agree. That's why I locked them because I mean, if 20 wins. If we're not rewarding teams for winning the games they play, I have a problem.
What are we doing? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That being said, guys, go ahead.
In a year where we have 17-10 Ohio State with not a very strong strength of schedule, in a year where we have Indiana that's 17-10, again, not a strong strength of schedule. Georgia's half of their wins are Q4.
Yep.
Half.
Yep.
Winning games has to matter.
Exactly. And I mean, in a year that we have, and I love Miami, but we have them as a 10 seed without a quadrant 1A win. Quadrant 1 win, sorry. SMC up there at the 9 line without a quadrant 1 game. Ohio State in without a quadrant 1 win. I mean, I'm sorry, you're not gonna fall out with the kind of resume Villanova has at this point.
Yeah.
But that being said, guys, we'll be back later this week to kind of break things down again. I appreciate you guys listening, and as always, let us know in the comments. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.